In very good health. I just won 2 club championships, not even senior, 2 regular club championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart, and you have to be able to hit the ball a long way, and I do it. He doesn't do it. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. He challenged me to a golf match. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. I think I'm in very good shape. I feel that I'm as in good a shape as I was 25, 30 years ago. Actually, I'm probably a little bit lighter.
Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him. The reason I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6. But by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf if you carry your own bag. Think you can do it?
That's the biggest lie that he's a 6 handicap of all.
I was an 8 handicap.
Yeah.
8.
Never.
But I had, you know how many...
I've seen you swing. I know you swing.
Let's
not act like children.
President Trump, we're going to
21
Let's not act like children.
You are
a
a child.
specific concern.
Hey, everyone. We're here with the Uncensored podcast. My lovely, lovely Tony DeCesare to my left. Welcome, everybody. We have a lot of things to share with you. Just, you know, your normal everyday yard sale fire. I'm sure you just loved that little exchange, the controlled demolition of the Biden presidency, as evidenced by the schoolyard brawl on who's got a better golf swing. Really excellent. You know, it's funny. I love that our first topic on our first episode of our uncensored broadcast is, of course, a debate that represents the wonderful soft arm of censorship, right?
Right.
Which is now officially rock hard. The rock hard censorship happening in America right now. I don't know if you knew this, but I read this recently. The debate, you know, it had, a 2-minute broadcast delay. We had mics that could be turned off at any minute. We had topics that were absolutely verboten. What else did we have? It was effectively a debate that was a movie that they were filming. It wasn't actually a live debate.
It was a farce. If you think about it, it's like, you know, Rome is burning, and we're worried about who's got a better golf game
and how much
like,
someone weighs.
And who weighs what? It's like there's 45 million, I think, that watch the podcast, and these two decide that they want to bicker over who's a better golfer and waste our time. So I think that just kind of tells you where we are right now.
But, you know, I heard a theory. So I've been one of these people that really believes what everyone, I think, believes at this time. You just had to watch everybody trotting out after post-debate discussion and how Biden's got to resign and he's too old to do this, acting as if, clutching their pearls, acting as if they're totally shocked that Biden is in a full state of dementia. But, you know, I was with a friend of mine over the weekend, and he floated this, and I actually think this might make more sense, that they want Trump to win. They want Trump to win because the world is a disaster right now. And there's a certain amount of delay as the banking system, for example, is running on fumes right now. And wouldn't that be so convenient if it all came crashing down while Trump was president?
Well, it's such a mess. I mean, compare where we are today to where we were in 2016 when he came into office. I mean, he's got so many things, regardless of who steps in.
Right.
It's such a train wreck, and it's going to take so long. It's like turning a cruise ship. It's going to take years to turn this thing around. And there's so many things that we just sort of glaze over. And I always talk about this, like, you know, they're using the distraction method on this, but the younger generation or the younger population, which is, you know, becoming more aware of what's going on right now, who's getting clobbered over the head with debt and inflation, can't afford a house. They've got all these issues, and they're saying, you know, maybe we made a mistake.
Starter homes are $600,000. It's so sad.
Well, you have a $1,400 a month, you know, student loan payment.
Right.
So it's almost impossible for them to get ahead of it. But, you know, at the same time, you've got this, it's like peeling back an onion. Whoever steps in is going to have to go through layer after layer after layer of all of this stuff. Forget about, like, foreign policy and all these forever wars that we're fighting and the money that we're throwing at these things. I mean, it's the federal government's answer to every single problem. Let's just go ahead and throw more money at it. That'll fix the problem.
Well, but, you know, Biden made handiwork of the U.S. real quick in 4 years. So you have to believe that maybe the same could be in the reverse. I mean, I'm hoping. Him closing down the pipeline on his second day of presidency was a big deal. That, I don't care what you say, that affected people immediately. And Trump opening it up, getting back to energy independence, that would be a huge success.
Okay,
of
so
the
you knock
presidency.
that domino down, and then you get to the next one, and then you've got the issue with immigration, right? So what
Well, you
are
don't
we going
think
to do?
10,000 deportations in one day is going to happen?
It's not at all. It's probably pretty easy. So, you look at those layers that they've got to get through, and whoever it may be, like you just said, even if they want him to come in, I mean, he still has all that administrative state bureaucracy to deal with, and he had it before.
I know.
But, I think
But he'll cut it. I mean, I do believe that he will cut that red tape. The lack of regulation under Trump is always a good thing, and I feel like that does free up. I mean, I believe it is why we had such a strong economy under him. It was a meaning, and his trade policies were transformative. And I do say to people all the time, forget, if you don't like Trump, who cares? Look at who you get with Trump. Kash Patel, Rick Grinnell, Stephen Moore. These people are brilliant minds, and they understand economy. They understand what turns an engine of an economy. So, it's possible that Trump will be able to make an impact despite the ridiculousness that's happened over the last
it's going to be
4
like
years.
it's going to be like turning a cruise ship.
I know.
And here's the thing that bothers me the most about the debate is that there are people out there that are actually saying, "Can you believe Joe Biden's performance at the debate last night?" And I'm sitting there saying to myself, "What rock have you been living under? Like, are you kidding me?"
It's unbelievable,
These
right?
people have been covering and covering, the media in particular, but they've been covering and covering and covering. And then when I hear that from people, I'm like just shocked. Like, you're kidding me, right? You haven't seen this? Like, are you just seeing this for the first time?
Or like my sister's neighbor, her only takeaway, this ridiculous neighbor of hers, was the 31 lies that Trump told. I thought, okay, you're busy fact-checking. I think that ship has now sailed. We need to be looking at posturing, body language, the fact that someone can finish a sentence. I mean, that's how low.
Okay, so let's take a look at that. Let's look at this. Let's look at this next clip from the debate and see exactly how bad it actually was that people actually woke up about this.
Okay,
So
can't
watch
wait.
this clip.
Can't wait.
What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America. Billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 billion, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare.
Nothing to see here, people.
Okay, yeah, that.
I was holding my breath the whole time I've never felt badly for that man, ever.
It's horrific.
And I felt really badly. I was like, this is elder abuse.
It is.
It really made me sad. It was I hate that I'm saying that, but it made me sad. And a lot of people are, I don't feel sad. I can't help it. I felt badly for him.
And there's still people saying, oh, you answered every
Trump's
question. Oh, I think one of the big takeaways from that, and I'm going to give Trump credit for this, is that he was more restrained. Yeah. But he won on facial expressions. And this debate in particular, you have to go back to 1960 when Nixon debated Kennedy. And the temperature in the room ratcheted up, and then Nixon started sweating.
I know.
And that's what people point to as one of the things that lost the election for him, is that picture of him literally like taking his handkerchief and like wiping his face. Yeah. If people took away from that this might not be the guy that we want to work for, what the hell was that?
And of course, I remembered the other thing. They took away the audience.
Correct.
Which Trump, that line, because you would have beaten it to death, or the Medicare company, Medicaid line. the whole audience, it would have taken them 5 minutes to calm them down. They knew what they were doing.
Right.
That's like oxygen to Trump. He loves a good audience.
So about a year, maybe it was longer than that. It was probably 2 years ago. I have a good friend that worked in memory care, and I just happened to run into her, and we were talking about Joe Biden, and this is 2 full years ago. This is someone who works in the industry, who's been doing this for a long time, and we just brought it up, and I didn't even finish the question. I said, "Hey, do you think Joe Biden?" And she immediately said, "Yes, 100% yes."
Sundowning.
Correct, sundowning. So, when you've got people that are seeing this in the profession and saying, "Oh, we have a major problem here. Like, this is not going to get better," and you've seen the escalation, how this has really accelerated over like the course of the last maybe
Which is classic
6 months.
dementia. You get away with it for a little bit, like 3 or 4 years, and then it just we're seeing it happen, and yet
Globally.
we're being told, what is it? Your eyes don't perceive. You're not hearing what you're understanding, right? It's just it's stunning what the media thinks they can get away with, but they've been getting away with it. So I guess that neighbor, the 31 lies that Trump told, that's her takeaway.
So look, we live in a bubble, right? I mean, we just literally live in a bubble, but globally people got to see that. And it was funny because I have a friend of mine from the UK who sent me that same video clip, and he replied underneath of it, the comment said, "You used to be a proper country."
I mean,
it was like,
well, what was the reel? It was a meme that said, Europe, please turn the debate off and let our family figure out.
let us heal. Let our family heal.
Well, we don't want to fight in front of the kids. It was, yeah, exactly. Well, one thing that we know is he's got to get elected fairly, which we're very, very much doubting. But we've got some things going on in Maryland that I think can help. After the 4-month legislative disaster, remember when our senators and our delegates are in session, your lives are never, ever, ever safe. And the last legislative session was no exception, none whatsoever. We had, let me first start with the Board of Election. I don't know if everyone was aware, but a week and a half ago, the Board of Election met. And for those of you who don't know, that we have had a lawsuit underway trying to get them to change the oath back to the original oath, and they're trying to use this oath to make sure that citizens like you and me cannot verify voter rolls. We can't use our official voter registration list to do any form of investigation and making sure that voter rolls are accurate. Well, they got wind of that, so they changed the oath, making that a criminal offense if you use the voter rolls for that. Well, interestingly enough, that lawsuit's been going on. And the sticking point of the lawsuit, the back and forth between our lawyer and the Board of Election, has been all about date of birth. If you will agree to not want voter lists with date of birth, then you have yourself a deal. Well, David and I have said, no way, Jose. We're date of birth. For those of you who don't understand, if you don't have date of birth, you have no way of verifying someone is a duplicate or dead or that they are who they say are. Date of birth is critical. Well, lo and behold, we look and see the Board of Election. Sure enough, they're trying to remove the ability to have date of birth on the voter registration. So we got wind of it. We took action. There was many people wrote in, and they did, in fact, table that discussion. And I'm pretty confident it's not going to go through. They're going to keep that date of birth, our ability to get voter registrations with date of birth. But it is something we have to keep our eyes on.
But this is a never-ending battle with the Board of Elections. I mean, there were how many bills last year were presented for voter integrity, voter accuracy?
There were 3. So actually, there were 4.
Okay, so there were 4
you got
bills.
the voter ID, 2 for voter ID, 1 for signature verification, and 1 for election official intimidation. I'm going to give the audience one guess. Which one passed and which 3 did not?
Well, back that up a second.
The ones that serve the people.
Right, the ones that serve the people. But
did not pass.
Did those three bills, 2 for voter ID and the 1 for signature verification, were they ever voted on?
No, they were kept right in the drawer, which
Wait a
is
minute,
stunning.
hold on. Who did that?
Oh, Vanessa Atterbury, the chair
Sure.
of the Ways and Means, which is how it works in Maryland, that these people, these 12 or 20 people on one little committee get to decide which bills are even heard. They don't even take them to vote. And it is unbelievable to me because you have an issue like voter ID, which 80% of Americans want voter ID. They
Correct.
want it. Yet Vanessa Atterbury and her 12 little friends are deciding, no, we're not going to vote on that. We're not going to vote on that. No voter ID for Marylanders. So 12 people are deciding what happens on our ballot. It really frustrates me.
So they're
to
going to try and pull date of birth out of the equation. We don't have voter ID already.
Right.
Here's my personal experience, because I went to like election judge training, and I ask people this all the time, and they always answer this question incorrectly. And the question is, do you have to be a citizen to vote in Maryland?
Technically, yes.
Technically?
So technically, yes.
Technically.
But they have wriggled their way out municipal voting, municipal elections.
Sure. So
And there's no way to verify citizenship. So,
my question to
Right.
them, when I ask this question, how do we verify citizenship, for the election? And the answer was, we verify residence. We don't your residency. So
Right,
if you have a
sure.
residence in Maryland, then you can vote
Yeah.
provisionally, but you
Yes.
can still vote.
Yep.
So you can show up with your BG&E bill. You can show up with your Comcast bill.
Yeah.
You can have an ID. They'll let you vote provisionally with that as well. But when I asked the question, do you have to be a citizen? The answer was, we just verify residency. That's
Yeah.
it.
What could
That's all it is.
possibly go wrong?
Nothing. But here's the thing that bothers me, and I'm a big meme guy. So
Yeah.
I find this meme and I post it. I forget how many people shared it, but it says, the places that you need to have an ID, right?
I know where
Bank,
you're going,
airport, doctor, pharmacy, school, gun store. Of course, the gun store, hunting, fishing, daycare, hospital, bar, workplace, voting. No, we don't need to see your ID,
No.
right?
You're not even allowed to show your ID. That was one of the bills. That was the second voter ID. So you had two. One is to use voter ID to vote, but the first voter ID was the ability, if you're a citizen, if you want to show your ID, you want to making it so that citizens can show their ID. I was confused about that. I was like, why are there two
Right.
voter ID on the market? And they said, because you're not allowed to show your ID. That's why these election officials, how many times have you heard, I've heard it a million times, someone will say to me that I went and I showed my ID when I voted, and the election official's like, put that down. Put it away. They're acting like it's a hot bomb or something. Like, oh, no, put it away. I'm like, I just want to show you my ID. They're not allowed to look at it.
Right, sure. That's just ridiculous.
Ass backwards,
So,
yeah.
so the only one of the four bills that actually passed was the election official intimidation,
Yes.
which I've heard that's rampant in the state where it's just
yeah. I mean, as evidenced by the complete not one example. Oh, I'm sorry. There was one example that Jared Demarinis, the election director for Maryland, he said, oh yeah, it was really, he was very vague about it. He didn't really know the details. Yeah, it was really sad. There was like an anthrax. There was an anthrax scare in 2014. And we said, oh, well,
10 years
that's kind
ago.
of serious. I didn't even know about that. I think I would have heard about it. Well, sure enough, when we followed up on it, the police department that covered that, they laughed at us. And they said, no, that was baby powder. And it ended up, meanwhile, Jared told us that people showed up. That's what he heard. Well, he heard wrong. And if he was hearing it from Linda Lamone, we know now why
Right.
he was lied to, because that never happened. There's never been one known case of election official intimidation.
But we passed a bill.
But we passed a bill to protect the election officials for the non-threats that are out there.
The non-threats,
Yep.
correct. All right, so what are the next steps on the Board of Elections?
Oh, gosh. Well, we have, it would be great if people would tune in. They've got, all you got to do is Google when their meetings are, Maryland State Board of Elections.
It's like
and
watching
find out.
paint dry.
It is.
It's you really got it.
It's more exciting than you might realize, Tony.
I've seen it.
I have to say, I do sometimes enjoy it when they bring up our lawsuit because it completely derails them, and I enjoy hearing them squirm, watching them squirm.
Which,
But
by the
yeah.
way, hold on. Maryland was the first state to file the lawsuit.
Yes, we were. Yes,
Right,
we were.
so-
Pennsylvania has now officially filed.
Right.
This is the other lawsuit about the cleaning up the voter rolls. And so voter rolls close on August 7th. Everyone needs to remember that. They close on August 7th. We are right now in the middle of drafting our appeal. We think it'll be ready tomorrow. We're in conjunction with Pennsylvania lawsuit right now. We're working with that attorney. So, there will be more. We have to file by July 9th. So there'll be more on the docket for that. But for now, we're just in the middle of drafting our appeal. And the objective there is to get them to clean up the voter rolls in advance of the 2024 general election, which is November 5th.
Basically like a month away.
Yep.
You got like a month.
August 7th.
And this started when?
This started September.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been, last year, we've been putting this together. We officially filed in January, but the wheels of justice are very slow unless you're Donald Trump, in which case they have time to do 91 indictments.
Very quickly,
Yes,
correct.
very quickly.
So
if you're a Republican, they're quite slow.
There you go. All right, so let's move on to the issue with the Act Blue canvas.
So for those of you who don't know, James O'Keefe was here about a year ago. No, it was
About a year.
October. I forget it was. Knocking on doors using some data that we had uncovered from a guy named Peter Berninger. I can never say his name. And it is effectively people on a list that have given very small amounts of money that actually add up to very large amounts, 250,000. So they're asking us to believe that some grandma, living in Essex gave $250,000 to Act Blue. Well, when we knocked on the door, we found out that was not indeed true. The grandma said, I have no idea. I may have given $5 here and there, but certainly not 250,000. So we have a more robust list. We're doing a statewide canvass, and so far we've knocked on, I think, 17 doors. Of them, 9 of those people have said that they did not give. Some of them were legit, but there were 7 that were completely illegitimate donations. They never gave that amount of money. And so our next step is to gather a nice amount of evidence. This is another lawsuit I have nothing to do with. But a man named Walter Charlton has filed this, and he's gathering evidence for his lawsuit. And it'll be great because what we're hoping is that this evidence will provide a subpoena power, where we can then subpoena the merchant records, and then we can follow the breadcrumbs to the people who are actually doing this. And then there'll be real evidence. That would be a very exciting lawsuit if it goes the way it looks like it might be going.
So you have these signed documents by people who said, I've never given any money to this organization.
Or they gave $5 10 years ago or something like that.
But they've got multiple donations beyond that. So so you've got all this information, and then you take it to who?
Well, we take it to the judge.
Right.
Effectively, we'd admit it into the court of law, and then maybe possibly have subpoena power to follow the breadcrumbs, request merchant records, Citibank, and then you can follow and say who actually made that donation, because that's the criminal. Obviously, it's not the people whose identity. It's identity theft.
No,
their identities have been stolen
innocent
in
bystanders.
in service of giving in very large amounts to candidates, because people may not know, but there's campaign limits. You can't just give endlessly. You have to. There's rules they have to follow. So they're trying to get away from those rules and be able to give huge amounts of money. It's money laundering is basically what it is.
So you have all these people that didn't give any money. Maryland's a small state, 6 million people. But how many times does that happen, like, across the country? You know what I'm saying? Like, that tends to add up. That money adds up over time.
Right.
So,
well, and Peter Berninger, who's the one who sort of blew the whistle on all of this, I think he's out of Wisconsin or Michigan. Sorry, I forget. He was arrested. He got off. he was able to, get a good lawyer, and he's still able to do what we're doing, but he was arrested because of all this. So it's definitely, there's a group doing this right now, and they're very brave because it's definitely putting themselves on some FBI watch list, because he had flashbang and did all that BS they were doing to the J6 prisoners.
Right.
Same thing. He got the J6 treatment.
Remember when you couldn't unmask the whistleblower? And now if you're the whistleblower, you go to jail?
Yeah, I remember that. I
wonder what happened there. Anyway, so that's good to hear that at least they've got some people that have signed those documents and said we don't have any idea where this money came
We'll
from.
see where it goes,
But
and we'll keep you updated on that.
So we do have some hard data, though, which
Yeah.
which was on the voter roll cleanup. And when I
Right.
got this information from you, I'm no genius as far as math, but these numbers just didn't add up.
Nope,
It was
they sure
insane.
don't.
So according to the federal census, we have a little over 6 million people in the state of Maryland.
Yep.
And according to the number of registered voters, we have how many?
Well, we have 4.1 million registered voters.
So I have here over 18, 4.5 million, okay, registered voters. Those are total eligible voter total eligible voter population is 4.5 million.
There you go.
Got
There
it.
you go.
Sorry about
Maryland registered voters, 4.4 million. Yes.
that. So it's 4.4. So you have an eligibility of 4.5, but you have registered 4.4, which gives you a registration rate of
98.9%.
whole states
That
registered.
Maryland State Board of Elections, they're killing it.
They're good.
And the average is 72%
Nationally.
registered voted. So national. So we're
crushing
killing
it. Yeah.
We're crushing it.
Everybody's voting.
Everybody believes that. I mean, you attend one of those meetings, you know what professional, serious people they are.
Yeah, they are. So if you extrapolate that 70...
The chair can't even get his mic to work half the time. It's that alone is reason to tune in, to watch him struggle for 10 minutes.
All right, so go back to the
Technology.
72%. So
Yeah.
if we extrapolate that 72% on the number of eligible voters, there's a potential inflation of the voter rolls.
Right. Of 1.2 million voters over what we really are.
Right, 1.2 million.
Yep.
And when was the last time they cleaned that up?
It's never been clean. I mean, it's never been clean. But Linda Lamone, starting in 2014, Linda Lamone, who was the old election director and really truly is verified. I mean, she's a criminal. She's a criminal. And I say that unapologetically. Come at me. She's a criminal. She absolutely undid all of the well-meaning safeguards. Just things like a yellow sticker, which means that, somebody moves, they send them a voter registration card, and it gets returned. Okay, and it's got a little a postal yellow sticker, this person has moved from the post office. Well, it used to be the case that the Board of Elections would get 3 of those, and then what would happen there is they would move them to inactive. You can never move someone off the rolls, unfortunately, but they move them over to inactive status. And then they would start the idea of, okay, clock starts now, and we're gonna watch this voter, it's inactive, and you couldn't be inactive for longer than 2 federal election cycles. And once they were inactive, meaning they never voted, they act there like dormant, then they removed them from the voter rolls. And it wasn't a perfect system, but it worked. It worked to some degree. Now they don't. You talk to election directors all across Maryland, and they will say, "Oh yeah," they'll point to a post office bin, and they've got a pile of mail with yellow stickers on it. We don't do anything with it. We've been ordered to stand down, per
What do
a
you mean
letter
stand
from Linda Lamone. Linda Lamone had an exchange with a woman in Anne Arundel County, which we have record of this letter. And Linda Lamone very carefully lined up in this letter, outlined and said, you will not use yellow stickers. They don't really work. And we have Eric now. So what effectively happened is Linda Lamone brought in Eric, which she was all in bed with the people who started Eric. Don't even get me started. We were the first state to adopt Eric. Upon Linda Lamone's request, she effectively told everyone, we don't need to do any manual removal of voter rolls anymore. We have Eric. So everyone took their hands off the wheel. And look what's happened.
Right,
The
so now we have
inflation
a
of rolls, 1.2 million
million
people are on our rolls. I think this is legitimate. I think this is a pretty good analysis. And these are all federal census data. We're not just pulling these numbers out of nowhere. So we've got a problem on our hands. The voter rolls are a mess. And if you've got every single violation on our voter rolls is an opportunity for fraud. It doesn't guarantee it's fraud, but it's an opportunity for fraud. And sure enough, we saw in the primary, people using registrations to vote, double vote, deceased voters being voted. We have record of that. And all of which will be included in our lawsuit. Sort of drips, and we are just collecting it and putting it as evidence.
All right, so let's close on this, and I want to
Okay.
talk about the primary real quick.
Yeah,
so
please, poll watching.
Yeah, poll watching, obviously. I mean, we actually had one of the lowest turnouts, I think, for the primary.
Ridiculous.
What was it, 28%, something like that?
Depends, but yeah, statewide 19%.
Oh, we crushed it.
Statewide 19%. Typical is 34%.
Now, this is with mail-in ballots now. Like,
yeah.
you can basically just fill out your ballot, while you're sitting on the John and
Yep.
throw the thing in the mail the next day, and you just voted.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So, and we got 19% statewide.
Yep.
And this is going into the general election.
Yep.
For the federal election.
Oh, God, it makes me so scared because I will tell you, people, if voter turnout, if the general election is reflection of the primaries turnout, we are screwed. Because we need to be too big to rig. We have to have the turnout that will make it impossible for them to steal. It's our only hope. I mean, it's all well and good. Our lawsuits are great. Our voter roll cleanup is great. The poll watching effort is probably our best foot forward for sure, getting good election judges, et cetera. But even all those, if we don't have massive turnout, it'll be too easy for them to steal with machines and bad voter rolls. I mean, it's going to be a lost cause if people don't show up.
So I think what you're starting to see is everyone is sort of like coalescing in the same direction now. You've got the Turning Point kids going out and registering voters, and you've got Scott Pressler out there, and he's throwing, people out there to register more voters. They're actually paying people, which is something that they had never really done before.
It's what the Democrats have been doing for years.
But they've got this enormous wedge that they're driving into this funnel to get more people registered to vote, which is actually helping in a lot of those states,
Swing
swing
states,
states like Wisconsin, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania, big one.
Yeah.
Scott Pressler
Huge.
moved there, actually. So
Huge.
you see this, but then you have a voter turnout of 19%.
God help us.
And in the primary, and you wonder, well, what's that going to look like in the general in November? How many people are actually going to turn out? I think what's happened is there's a lot of apathy towards that now, just because I think 2020 just crushed people, and they were like, is this for real? Right?
And they were told over and over again baseless claims of fraud, meaning these people are not, they think we're stupid. They think that we're going to look at something and we're not, we're told we're not seeing what we're seeing. We're told we're not hearing what we're hearing. And so people get frustrated. They say, well, what's the point? They're just going to do what they're going to do. And they're not entirely wrong. The only issue I have is, despite all of it, continue to vote. Because if you don't, we're really screwed.
That's the only thing you can do.
I mean, you got to at least leave nothing on the field. I believe that with everything I have.
I'm gonna add this, and I think this is where the media has imploded.
Yeah.
And the fact that the Joe Biden thing that we started out with in the beginning, with them covering for him, and by the way, like, how many of these people within his inner circle have been, privy to this information and secluding him and making decisions,
Bubble wrapping him.
bubble
Yeah,
wrapping
so he
him
doesn't
the
make it,
entire time. But you have to blame the media.
Yeah.
The mainstream media, number one, has covered and given him so much cover. With this
you control
situation.
the media, you control everything.
Here's the problem, though, and this is where I've heard this firsthand. Years ago, when newspapers, print media was predominant, you had to wait until, I'll give the Nixon-Kennedy debate as an example. It was televised, and people saw that in real time. They saw him sweating. They saw the stress on his face and trying to handle it. Okay, well, things like that had never happened before. You'd have to wait, 20 years before that, you'd have to wait until the paper came out.
Right.
And you'd have to hear what they told you actually happened. Well, because of the internet now, it happens in real time. And the media has been putting stories out for years. I'll go back to 2020 as one of them. I'll throw J6 out there as another one. They've been Mockingbird Media.
Right.
They've been doing this. But then you've got all these people with these phones on the ground, and they're going, no, That's not what happened.
Not buying it.
No, here's the
Right.
video of that. Let me show you this, and they'll send it. I mean, I was one of those people on Twitter. I shared the video, online of the barriers at the
Martin
Capitol,
Curry-
and I got banned.
Martin Curry, Revolt of the Republic.
Uh-huh.
That is a book exactly. It talks exactly about what you're talking about, where he takes through time. I mean, ancient Rome, where we have these leaders and rulers that do it, and it's all through word of mouth, and then it's the serfdom, and then you have the printing press, which takes that divide and gets a little bit closer. Then you fast forward. Now you got the internet. The divide between the elites and the masses went from here to almost, you can't even see daylight
They're touching.
between the two of them now, which is, I think, why we are seeing, and he makes this point in the book, why we are seeing just total unrest, because we've been lied to forever. But now we know we're being lied to because we took a video of it. We know what we saw on TV with Joe Biden. Don't tell us that his cognitive decline is artful editing on the form of Fox News. That is ridiculous. We saw it in front of us, and it's an insult. And I think that's why I was so angry after the debate, what they think they can get away with.
So to take that to the next step, it's the boots on the ground people that have debunked all this stuff.
Right.
They have
right.
come out, and I'll give your sister Wendy credit for this, because I mean,
Right.
she's like a dog with a bone. She sinks her teeth
Sure
into
is.
it. She's not letting go.
Nope.
And she'll run with that story, and she'll pick up the phone, and she'll call people, and she'll download video, and she'll pull up tweets, and she'll go through all these different sources to make sure that what she's saying is 100% correct. And you know what? She's not calling up the New York Times or the Washington Post or ABC or whoever it may be, okay? She's calling the people that were standing there at that actual moment.
Right.
You understand?
Right.
And that's where the world has changed, because the populist movement just grows and it grows, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, because people are going, wait a minute, I'm calling bullshit on all this, okay? This inflation thing, no, what you're telling me, that's not what's happening in my grocery cart.
Right,
Okay?
right.
What you're telling me, the whole climate change thing. They're like, what you're telling me, nah, I don't necessarily see that. We'll do a whole other podcast on the climate change thing, because I have friends that are environmental scientists that I hang out with who told me this story 20 years ago,
Yep.
right? And I started wondering, like, okay, well, you know what? Now I don't have to wait to hear it from them. I can just go online and I can look it up.
Right.
And that's what people are doing. They're looking at what the media are saying. They're going in, they're circling back, and they're saying, wait a minute, I want to make sure that's true. And they'll look it up. And
Right.
that's where things have changed. We
Right.
don't take what the media says, as the gospel anymore.
Discernment, baby.
Discernment.
You gotta
correct.
have critical thinking.
All right, finish up
Right.
with your poll watching,
All
because
right,
that's
so
important.
poll watching. Listen, it's, I think, our best foot forward. People there at the polls, it makes complete sense to me that if we have people in the polls, eyes and ears right there in front of them, then we can at least stop the mistakes. These are incompetent people, so they can stop the mistakes. The training is abysmal. You lived through it for 3 hours. So
It's
it
tough.
helps keep everyone, T's crossed, I's dotted, things like that. Now, you can be a great election judge. That's the most important thing, but it's quite a commitment. It's a training, it's an all-day commitment, et cetera. You can be a poll observer. That's more flexible, but you don't really have any power except for to observe and take notes, which is useful. And then being a canvasser, being a closer is sort of the sweet spot. Being a closer, you get to be there at the end of the day. You get to be basically an election judge for a much shorter period of time. So we've got all kinds of opportunities. We're going to have an orientation, which will sort of walk everyone through what their opportunities are. And then we will have an auxiliary training for people so they can learn what to look for, sort of, what being an election judge entails, what being a poll observer entails, give you all the resources. We're going to have a hotline. We're going to have a team of attorneys that are going to really sort of help people in that day of election. And, collecting data. At the very, very least, we will collect a lot of data, make sure that these elections, if they're trying to steal them, we're going to finally have the evidence.
So what's the
fact.
time commitment, though, for the average
So for
person?
election judges, it's brutal. It's 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. if you're lucky. because you got to stay to the bitter end. That's actually where all the shenanigans happen, is the evening. So you really got to stay to the end. You do not ever leave. The biggest mistake people have made in the past is the chief election judge, who's probably a criminal, is saying, okay, guys, we got this, and everybody leaves. They're happy to get the hell out of there. No, you can't leave. You got to stay to the end, because that's when they pick up the ballots and they do all the funny business. So important to stay to the end. So it's a big commitment to be the election judge. Now, a poll observer, much more flexible. You can just do it for a couple hours,
Come and go.
take some, something a little more simple. But then there's canvassing, and that's counting of the votes. We need good canvassers as well. The important thing is for people to let us know, because we have learned that the Board of Election puts their people in, despite plenty of Republicans signing up. I have countless number of friends who sign up. Oh, I was all excited, but they told me we didn't need anybody. I said, really? Oh, is that right? Because we were deficit in our Republican judges. So do not take the Board of Election their word for it. You absolutely must let us know. We've got citizenvoter2024@gmail.com. That will allow us to put your name in, and we will make sure you are selected. And we're going to hand them that list probably the beginning of August. But it's never too late to let us know. I mean, up to the very last day, you can let us know, and we'll make sure.
What's the last training for election judges? What's the date?
Oh my goodness, it's like the day before.
Like the week before. It's like
actually,
that week.
It is. I believe I'm correct. Don't quote me for sure, but I believe it's the Friday before the Tuesday. So if early voting starts on Thursday, it'll be like Tuesday before that, and for election day, it's the Friday before the Tuesday.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. I look forward to doing it again.
All right,
Wingman.
sweetie.
Good
this
times.
was fun. Thanks,
Absolutely.
guys.
Thanks for staying with us. We'll be back next week with another episode of the PCA Uncensored Podcast. See you then.